Yeah,
I'm just
all
gonna,
phones on silent.
yeah, I'm just gonna also close my Outlook because I'm sure it's gonna come up with some emails and ringtones. Mute my laptop. All right, ready to roll.
Awesome. Anything else, Fro? Any other housekeeping? All right.
All
Awesome.
you.
So am I doing the intro then?
Yeah.
Okay, it's your project, but fine. All
It's
right.
your podcast.
Okay. Welcome everybody to the Smooth Brain Society. This is one of our episodes in association with the Explaining Atheism program, which Farrell and Ayana had come on earlier to speak about. So this is the first actual episode after the intro. So welcome back, Farrell. Farrell's also been on other episodes with us, so you would have seen her around. And our very first guest is Dr. Sara Rahmani. Did I get that correct?
Yeah.
Should have probably checked it before I went online, but yeah. All right. But Dr. Rahmani is a lecturer in religious studies at the School of Social and Cultural Studies at Victoria University of Wellington. And her focus is on Māori atheism. That's all the information which I have at the moment, because religion and atheism both are not my field. So what I would do is I would throw it over to Dr. Rahmani herself, and she can first give us a little overview of her background, how she got here, and why, and the and yeah, and how she basically got into the field of religion and studying atheism. So yeah, thank you for coming on, Sara.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the invite and for your initiative to do this podcast series. It sounds very exciting. So yeah, my project, and as far as it's affiliated with Explaining Atheism, looks at atheism and tries to understand or try to explain its formation within the Māori context. But since you asked about my background and how I got to the discipline of studying religion, well, I'm from Iran originally, and I think about the time, I don't know if you guys remember Tom Cruise jumping up and down on Oprah's couch because he was madly in love with someone and he was into Scientology. And I kept seeing him all over news, and I was very intrigued to understand what.
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
was that person you who was jumping up and down for?
No, he was. Like, he was on the news. He was going through this craze.
No, he's asking if you were the love interest.
If you were the love interest,
Oh,
that was
that's
the question.
gross. No, thank you. I do not dig this person, but I found him intriguing. And as far as Scientology, what was that? Like, I've never heard of it. And that got me into a rabbit hole of looking into cults, looking into new religious movements, and then, Freemasonry. What is that about? Like, it all sounds really fascinating. And so I think I was about maybe 17 or 18 years old when I went down this rabbit hole. And then I found my way to books that looked at the history of religion across the board. And then Buddhism really just hooked me in. And from there, I just went on to look into Buddhism and Buddhist philosophy at more depth. And I found a retreat center around where I lived in Iran. And once I finished, I was really just interested to take this as a proper study. So I moved to the UK and I did my bachelor's in study of religions. And then from there, I think kind of the rest is history. I came back to New Zealand, did my PhD on the same movement. It's called Goenka's Vipassana movement. And with that project, I looked at processes of joining and leaving religion. So if you want to have a kind of find a thread across the works that I've done so far, it's been this process of leaving religion. What does that look like? How is it experienced? And particularly taking a linguistic approach. So what happens, there's this kind of, you can reject God, you can reject Jesus, you can reject whatever. But how do you then reconstruct your reality and a sense of self outside of this universe of sort of, or discourse, I would, using Mead, I would say, or a framework, religious framework? How do you go on about your life when you're moving away from a religious frame of reference, right? So that's what I've been looking at. And then I was also part of the Understanding Unbelief project, so extended that sort of process to looking at mindfulness movement. So how do atheists and agnostic people who meditate, what's happening there? Does their sense of self, their view of the world, their understanding of their place in it change when they participate in mindfulness meditation? And again, what's fascinating about mindfulness here is it's based on Buddhist teaching and Buddhist meditation practices, but it's repackaged in a kind of secular scientific language. So it's already kind of lots of interesting dynamics happening here. And then from there, I came back to New Zealand and I was teaching a course called God's Godlessness. So going through 3 different interesting books, looking at monotheism, polytheism, and atheism. And in one of my classes on atheism, one of my great students that are still working with us brought to my attention a group on Facebook that is called Aotearoa, a community of Māori atheists and freethinkers. And I was just taken aback. I was very excited to learn more, went and researched them, wrote a proposal for this particular student to carry a summer project over, the 3 months. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for them to take for some logistic reasons, but, that was the start of my interest in this topic. And from there, the project grew into a bigger collaborative work. So I've been working with Professor Peter Atz from Māori Studies, who's been really just amazing, helping me understand through a lot of the things that I don't know from the Māori context and the history of colonizations. But yeah, so this is the long story of how I got to this project. And yeah, now we are part of the Explaining Atheism. So looking to understand what are the individual, sociocultural, historical structures that contribute to the rise of atheism and its formation in New Zealand.
All right. No, that's really, really cool. I maybe the best place to start then, because you said because you're interested in leaving religions. That's your. I feel that was your kind of route into everything. Ayana mentioned that people tend to define and view atheism slightly differently, or kind of have different understandings of it. So in that regard, what is your understanding of atheism? Because I feel that would kind of influence how you research it.
Yeah. So when I said I'm interested in leaving religion, I was trying to kind of tell you about this theme that has been overarching theme in my projects that unites everything. So in this, you're right to point that atheism, obviously there's many different ways of being atheist. First of all, you can leave a religion and become an atheist. So there's that we would call that deconversion process. You can also just grow up without no religion and never having to have been socialized into a religious worldview. So for this project in particular, I'm taking a very normative approach in defining atheism as non-belief in God or gods, and that's it. So it allows me to cast quite a wider net and understand and speak with people who may, for example, not believe in gods, but may hold some other supernatural belief. So understanding those differences and diversities are quite crucial for my project, at least, because, yeah. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
So I had a follow-up in that before we get into your project on Maori atheism, I thought it was really interesting that you spoke about Scientology and mindfulness. And would you consider Scientology and mindfulness to be a part of atheism, or would you think is that a theistic expression rather?
Oh, not at all. That's not what I meant to imply. What I was saying about Scientology is how I got hooked into the field of study of religion. Scientology is obviously I'm going to use the word that a lot of academics hate. It's a cult. Mindfulness, on the other hand, is a movement. So there's different connotations for these words. I wouldn't call either of them atheistic. My interest in mindfulness was as far as how does it impact or influence atheists' understanding of themselves, the world. What does it do for them? Why are they attracted to this practice? And so on. Yeah.
So you wouldn't consider like even mindfulness to be almost like a form of theistic practice, like prayer and meditation? Or would you?
It is a form of meditation. Meditation is not theistic by nature, or like in and of itself. You can have theistic forms of meditation, like Christians have meditation,
Right.
Sufis have meditation. Mindfulness, I feel like we have to very carefully separate the mindfulness that we have, or the way it's used in traditional Buddhism, with this modern therapeutic mindfulness that we see promoted in the West, in schools, in our workplace, and hospitals, and all sorts of different sectors. They are entirely different things. And there's a big history of how we went from traditional Buddhist understanding of mindfulness and the practice of meditation to this version that we have that's being used on an app on, I don't know, everywhere. So they're two separate things. Yeah.
Yeah, super interesting, and thank you for clarifying that. So yeah, without further delay, would you like to tell us some more about your project on Maori atheism? How did you go about studying it, and how did you, if you have any results, then what are some of your key results, if you could share them with us? So what does Maori atheism even look like?
Okay, so as I was saying, I've started this project a long time ago, and Peter Ads and I have been working on this for over 2 years. So the methodology of this research is in-depth interviews with Maori who do not believe in gods. That's the very kind of baseline. And so analyzing those interviews in ways to understand, first of all, how is atheism articulated? How is it experienced? Later on, going into doing other sort of analysis, trying to understand what are the key factors that lead to Māori deconversion from Christianity or whatever religion, or atheization, so becoming an atheist. And I'm also not taking for granted that some Māori are atheists. They didn't grow up with religion to begin with, okay? So that's not to conflate that. So what have we found? So this paper that is quite fresh in my mind, and we're hoping to have it out in the world fairly soon. In this particular paper, we're just focusing on, okay, how was atheism articulated? What are the themes that come up what are the most common themes that come up when people are talking about religion? So why am I rejecting religion? So we found that the main difference, maybe I shouldn't use difference, but the key anchoring point of most narratives for these participants was some sort of reference to colonial past of Christianity. So I'm rejecting Christianity because of the harm that it's done to my culture, to my people, to my language, XYZ. And there are other kind of nuances in this way of articulation. For instance, something that I found deeply fascinating and empowering was, and it's the other side of the kind of colonial critique, is to say, actually, Christianity is irrelevant to indigenous people because it's a religion that's for the Middle East. So it's a kind of operationalizing the idea of indigeneity. If this religion developed in the Middle East, it's the myth and the creation story for that region. Its realm of authority is for that region. It is entirely irrelevant for Māori because, we have our own gods or we have our own creation myths and so on and so forth. So in these particular key aspects, we found that when people talk about leaving religion, these two come up, but in other aspects, it's very similar to narratives of atheists elsewhere. For instance, kind of critiquing religion on accounts of religious hypocrisy, religious bigotry, religious exclusivism. Should I go through these differences? Yeah. So in terms of, for instance, saying, the theme of religious hypocrisy comes up in so many research. Hugh Turpin's book on Holy Catholic Ireland talks about this. All sorts of research on both deconversion and atheism have captured in one way or another these different moral criticisms or intellectual doubt. So I'm leaving religion, I'm leaving Christianity because I don't know, it just doesn't correspond with what we know about the world through scientific lens, right? So all of this is present in the data that we have, but in particular ways, even kind of rejection of religion on accounts of religious exclusivism and bigotry are again underpinned by the colonial critique in ways that your religion came and you present that as a kind of cultural superiority, treating our gods and deities as evil, labeling them as satanic, like these different forms that the critique of empire religion or colonial sort of, I suppose, legacy of Christianity is critiqued and articulated and intertwined in these different critiques. So that was one of the most important findings of our research, but that's not to say that it was for everybody. We had participants who actually rejected this way of articulation. We had few participants who said, I would prefer not to talk about it in these terms. They emphasized, again, the element of intellectual doubt. So that was the overarching theme for them. And they actively sought to kind of distance themselves from what they would label a kind of narrative that uses victimhood to reject religion. So I really just want to emphasize that while a rejection of religion on account of and when we say religion here, it's Christianity. Okay, they didn't talk about religion as this abstract idea or category. Whenever religion was evoked in any critique of religion, it was targeted. It was very precise and contextualized Christian history in New Zealand. Okay, so I just want to also clarify that, which is a fascinating thing in its own right. So not all participants use this narrative, overarching narrative anchor to reject religion and construct an atheism against this point, right? Other people use different themes and different ideas. Yeah.
I have so many questions.
Bring it.
Um, First, you I like how you clarified that we're talking about Christianity in terms of the Maori context, but it, considering indigenous religions are a thing, like most indigenous cultures had some form of religion or the other. Um, is reverting from Christianity to back to those indigenous religions, do you consider that atheism in this context, or are you talking about rejecting Christianity and rejecting whatever the prior indigenous religions were? So in Maori case, their religion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is it.
absolutely. I think you stole the words out of my next follow-up to Sahir's question would be, what about belief in Maori concepts like whakapapa and belief in like being connected to your dead ancestors, which in other cultures is seen as superstitious belief? Is that considered to be atheistic here?
That's excellent question, both of you. Yes, so as part of the research, we also look at the typologies, the different ways atheism, the different positionalities. Okay, so we have a spectrum between what we would call positive atheism, the kind of naturalistic sort of view. I'm rejecting gods. I'm rejecting all supernatural phenomena. To when you have negative atheism, I'm rejecting God, but there's no assertion made on whether God's, there's no kind of categorical rejection of their existence. I just don't know. I'm just going to rely on the best information that I have at hand, right? So that's the difference between negative and positive atheism. And then on the end of the spectrum, you have people for whom atheism means rejection of Christianity, rejection of gods in particular, but they may hold ambivalent beliefs or uncertain unbeliefs towards other supernatural concepts. And in this particular case, as you rightfully pointed, it is the concept of tipuna, like my ancestors. So it's a spectrum of positionalities, and we explore these and try to understand, okay, what are the differences, what are the commitments of each group, how do they talk about atheism, how do they understand it, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
I guess the next logical follow-up would be, what do you have any interviews with people who have gone the other way, in the sense not towards Christianity, but people who had certain indigenous religious belief and then moved away from them as well? So they're atheists in the sense not even going towards Christianity or anything, but as well as rejecting their ancestral background, whatever.
So nobody is rejecting their ancestral background. They are having different interpretations of it, right? So, as I said, you have a spectrum of ideas. On one side, people who would say, I don't believe in any supernatural phenomena. In the middle are people who say, well, I don't believe in any gods. But, all these different ideas and concepts, if you interpret them metaphorically, it would make sense. The idea that a river is alive, that can be interpreted in a way that it would make sense in accordance to scientific beliefs, right? And then on the far other side of the spectrum, people who would be, well, I am an atheist, but I have a little bit of ambivalence around perhaps, my ancestors. Sometimes in time of need, I may be talking to my ancestors, which isn't anything out of the ordinary. We know literature says that a lot of atheists, in fact, have relationships with dead relatives. I speak to my dead mom sometimes. Abby Day, who's just written a really fascinating book on ex-boomers, ex-Anglican boomers, writes at length about this, that most of the participants, even the most atheistic participants she spoke to, still held some supernatural belief, especially in relation to dead relatives, loved ones, and so on. So that's just a clarification for that. You had another question, about the trajectory. So the preliminary analysis that I've done, based on the initial rounds of interviews, and I have to, obviously do this more, and as I go on with interviewing more people, I can actually test to see whether this is the case. But from the preliminary analysis of people's narratives and the story that they tell me about the project of their biographical narratives, I could see that there is a very interesting, clear trajectory of people rejecting Christianity, rejecting religion, but this could also be because they were raised, the vast majority were raised in some sort of Christian denomination, okay? So the first stage is rejecting Christianity on accounts of the colonial past, and then a kind of engagement with Te Ao Māori, learning about Te Ao Māori, learning te reo, learning about, all sorts of things. And so you have this dip, but some people then come out and say, well, this is also supernatural. Some bits of it are supernatural. I will choose what elements of Te Ao Māori I'm selecting as cultural practices, and, and what elements I'm happy to let go because those are supernatural beliefs, right? And then from here you have different trajectories. People who become positive, or form positive atheism, negative atheism, and people who have ambivalent views. So this is a trajectory that I've seen, but I'm yet to confirm it against the new rounds of interviews that I've done. And the design of this project is that we're not only speaking with Māori who are atheists, we are also going to speak with Māori who are Christian, identify with traditional Māori beliefs, just to compare, as a control group, to compare and see whether these the factors that we find are crucial and key to the emergence of atheism kind of stand in this other group, because ideally it should be absence. Whatever we find as a key factor should not be coming up in the other group.
So my next question, and I think building on to what you mentioned about Hugh, so I know that in his work, a lot of atheism or decline in religiosity started with the sexual assault scandal. And maybe that was the trigger point for atheism. Is there a societal trigger point that is triggering a lot of Maori people to move away from religion? Is there anything societally happening right now, or is it just a general trend?
Well, yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that, because when we talk about trends, I was also wondering about numbers of how prevalent is this, was my question, among Maori populations, because we had Riruwai Fox on, who does work on Maori well-being, and him and Eli Rukuwai spoke about various different identical differences within Maori itself for, as you mentioned, colonization, history, blah, blah, blah. So what kind of even numbers are we talking about here? Right, so that would probably be a follow-up to Farrell, or at the same time.
I will start with that because that's a good question. Both amazing questions. The numbers, what we're going with are what we have from the stats. And the latest stats that we have from 2018 shows that 53% of Māori chose the no religion category. Now, no religion category is complex, it's massive, it encompasses lots of different self-understandings, people who say I'm spiritual but not religious, people who are agnostic, and also people who are atheist, and all the typologies of those categories. But 53% is quite a big number. So what is happening actually here? What are the motives? What we found in this study is that, and now this is a response to Farrell's question, when people talk about their atheism, anchoring it on a critique of colonialism, it makes it, I guess the interpretation of that I'm making is that atheism in this context is politically charged. I'm making a political statement, in fact. And so we can look at the history of atheism and activism, atheism and kind of the colonial projects. There is massive amount of literature on this. Just the way these things work together. It's been studied, all across, I guess, Southern Africa. Atheism or atheist ideologies were influencing a lot of the colonial projects. And so it's by way of just listening to these stories and the way people talk about it and the themes that are coming up, it seems to us that, yes, it's a very politically charged position. And two, it is connected with broader anti-colonial movements, Maori protest movements, decolonial feminist movements. A lot of these critiques that we're hearing by way of more criticism towards religion are aimed at the role of religion in spreading prejudice views around women, prejudice and harmful views to our LGBTQ community. A lot of these, lines of arguments is strong and present in Maori atheist narratives. So how are they influenced? I think that's where we need to look. We need to look at it in its entanglements and connections to these broader movements.
Yeah, no, really interesting. And now that you have brought up some of the societal level theories of atheism, existential threat being how much threat are we under in terms of, physical and societal threats. So war is one, food scarcity is one, that's one of them. Education, the rise in education is linked to rise in atheism. What do you think is happening in Aotearoa that can be connected to rising atheism?
Well, I'm just going to preface what I'm going to say with, this is my hunch based on a preliminary look at the interviews. So we've got 27 interviews that I'm yet to properly analyze for all these different factors. But my hunch is education is standing out as a very strong factor. And it's not any type of education. It is humanities and social sciences. And this would make sense because a lot of the participants had done either Māori studies, some sort of social sciences, and those degrees deal specifically with the history of Aotearoa, with the history of colonization, with the history of Christianization from a, proper perspective rather than sort of, I suppose, I feel like that sort of an angle is lagging in other disciplines. And so I'm not surprised to see there is a correlation, a very strong correlation between education and as in education standing as a factor here, and how that education isn't just, any kind of education for I suppose, I had the numbers, preliminary numbers at some point, and I can't remember it on top of my mind, but it was something on the lines of at least 33% of participants were had done a degree in Māori studies. The rest were like 65 to 70% in social sciences. And those critical thinking that that is the cornerstone of these disciplines really equipped you to look at these pasts and analyze kind of these issues from a proper critical perspective. So that would be my hunch. It's not something that I would be quoted on because I'm yet to properly analyze the data. Yeah.
Well, I think even generally, you would see rises in atheism with just more access to information and more access to people. I feel like if there's only one religion in one village and you only grow up seeing that and only doing that, you just follow it, as opposed to when your eyes are open to other things or when you have access to other things. And I feel education in general gives people more access.
That's
which
right.
could also just be linked.
Yeah, and you're pointing also to pluralism, which is another key factor, right? When you're living in an insular context and you're not faced with other worldviews, you won't question yours. But once you have different worldviews and each claiming a different God and truth claim, then you're like, well, if this God is right, then what about that God? And is my religion, so pluralism. And that's like Peter Berger's sort of refined theory of that's something that sociology of religion has been talking about for a long time, and I think that certainly is a very strong contender in this context as well.
Yeah. Shout out to the Explaining Atheism Instagram page, which is currently explaining all these societal level theories. A mini plug that you can remove later. But yeah, a really, really, really interesting work, Sara. So are there different, we've already spoken about different expressions of atheism, but are there different trajectories to reach this point of atheism? Or is it, like you said, questioning it, reconnecting with the Maori roots and then, back up and completely rejecting any form of religion in itself?
Some people reject it. Some people prefer a metaphorical rendering and interpretation of certain concepts in Te Māori, and then some people might be like, yeah, I'm going to be ambivalent towards this idea, but I'm rejecting this other one. So yeah, are there any other trajectories? I don't know. Again, I really wanted to emphasize that this was something that was a preliminary analysis, and I'm yet to kind of confirm it because we have to see what is happening with people who grew up atheists. They didn't have any religion to begin with. So what's going on in that context? So I wouldn't be able to comfortably and confidently answer that question yet.
I have a question about your participants, because you are doing these heavy qualitative interviews. How many participants? We know you've talked a little bit about some preliminary stuff, or you've hinted to it. So how many participants are you looking at getting? What are they going to kind of appear like in terms of demographics? Do you have any goals in that regard?
So the participants that we are aiming, or I suppose we have so far spoken with 27 participants. And for the Explaining Atheism project in particular, our aim was to speak with 45 people. And that category includes 30 people who are atheists and 15 people who come from different religious sort of backgrounds and who identify with different religions. So, for instance, Catholicism, Maori who are Catholic, Maori who are affiliated or identify with traditional Maori beliefs, and Anglican. So these are the categories that the Maori atheists we spoke with were that was their religious upbringing. So ideally, we want to see the same sort of in the religious or theist group as well. So overall, 45 individuals, and so far we've spoken with 27.
45 is a large number for qualitative research. So yeah, kudos to you.
Thank
you. What are the next steps for your research? Where do you want to take this research? What are some of your next studies looking like? What are some of your next research questions and hypotheses?
Excellent question. So as we are still in the midst of analysis and data collection, and we're doing them simultaneously, so the next couple of years for me in this project would be just to really immerse myself into that interview material and understand what is happening. So that would be my next couple of years, and analyzing that from two aspects. So the question that I started this research with was, what does it mean to be an atheist in this context? And the second question, that's a Explaining Atheism question, is what are the factors? And so I've just kind of completed the first dimension of this research, and that dimension looked at people's experiences. It looked at articulations of atheism, and it looked at just the contours of atheism. Those typologies and the categories and the different outlooks and commitments people have. That sort of the whole, the diversity of atheism. So that's part has been completed, and the next step would be to analyze the data from the perspective of just looking for different causal theories and exploring them. Yeah.
I also wanted to ask, because you mentioned that you look at things from a linguistic perspective. So what does that mean, looking at something from a linguistic perspective, as someone who has no idea? I know that it's language and learning of language, but nothing more than that.
Okay, excellent question. You are entering the realm of my nerdiness. So a linguistic approach, first let's distinguish it from a discourse analysis and a narrative analysis, which is, what I'm doing. So narrative analysis can be done in two ways. You look at the themes that come up, trying to understand their relationship, which is what I've explored. The themes that come up are colonialism, or rejecting religious on accounts of different moral critiques and so on and so forth. And then you can look at the same narratives and their structure, the way people talk. Why do you talk about it this way and not in a different way? So structural narrative analysis is actually like borrowing a lot from linguistic analysis, and really wants to kind of shift the analytical lens to how these stories are formed and why not in a different way, right? What influences this particular telling of the story? It pays attention to the delivery of a narrative. So, for instance, the tone, the specific words that I might use and other words that I might not use, the way I would change my voice in order to convey some meaning. It would look at the structure. And so that's what I'm doing. And what it tries to do, really, it tries to connect that with broader sort of broader sociocultural, historical, linguistic, all sorts of things that have shaped this way of articulation, whilst also taking acknowledgement of the context of an interview as it being a interpersonal relationship. So I'm in particular talking with you, Sahir, and Farrell in this format, right? This is the context of this interview. So what are the power dynamics between us? What are the, that's what it pays attention. And it borrows a lot of those from linguistic philosophy and linguistic analytical lens. So that's what I meant.
That's really cool. But then this gets into a navigation of the, what do you say, the environment kind of question. How so do you find it hard, or I feel I need to go back to some of the other guests we've had on. So how Tianeha, who came on, and she speaks about ground up kaupapa Maori research, research for community, by the community, and so on. Because people are talking to you about about their own personal journeys, and also which links back to their communities and their histories, do you find it one, how do you navigate the space, and two, are there any differences between them talking to you versus someone who might be from the same cultural background as them?
That's a very, very interesting question. My personal experience here has been that this has been the most what is the word? Like I feel like I've grown so much as a researcher and become aware of a lot of my privileges by being involved in this project. But to answer your question, which is, would obviously me being non-Maori and non-Pākehā has a direct influence on the ways in which narratives are constructed and the context of the interview and everything. So I'm not kind of denying that. Whether the content of the interview would have taken another form and another tone and another direction had the researcher doing the interview was Maori or was Pākehā, that's not out of the question. Of course, the content and the tone and obviously the outcome of the research would have been different. Fortunately, I'm not, I'm doing this in collaboration with Peter. And every step of the process, from writing the interview questions to analyzing them to writing up, the results, we are working collaboratively together. And parts of me thinks that my unique outsider third sort of positionality really kind of puts me in this interesting, unique spot where, because I didn't grow up in New Zealand, and because I'm, not Pākehā, I'm not Māori, I feel like it does give me certain privileges at the same time. So it's a complex question. Like I have to, we have to have other people comment on this. I don't think it's like my role to say, whether my positionality as an Iranian coming into this context and doing this sort of research has a positive or negative effect. I feel like it is certainly doing something, and that's a question for Māori to answer, whether they, what they think about this. Actually, that's
So to ask you, what have been some of your challenges as an Iranian researcher coming into this field, and then what have been some of your advantages, as you said, in your opinion? Like while navigating this research, what did you find challenging, and then what did you find really easy having the positionality that you do?
Oh dear Lord. Okay, let me think about this. The challenges. Well, let me start by this. When I am out and about and people ask me, where are you from? Immediately, and I say I'm from Iran. One of the first questions that come up is, are you Shia or are you Sunni? So I'm automatically assumed that I am Muslim, that I am religious, that this and that. And I feel that in those particular elements, there is a common ground or a sense of understanding between myself and the participants, because these are in a very different way. The Māori atheists are also kind of struggling with this idea of, oh, are you rejecting God? Then, are you also rejecting your heritage? Is that what being an atheist mean? So it's in those particular ways, I feel like the experiences that I have as an Iranian woman living in a kind of bicultural context, or when I'm, I guess, in Europe or any other country that I live in, is in some ways the same, not the same, but similar in some ways to experience of Māori, because for many of our participants, when they reject religion, their Māoriness is questioned by other people, and that is a kind of it's outrageous. Right? So I would say that's one. I wouldn't say it's positive, but it's definitely makes it easier for us to understand each other. What is difficult is me not really understanding the history, not really like I'm learning as I'm going ahead with this work. You're a student for life in academia, but I feel like that is definitely a disadvantage on my part, where I don't speak proper te reo. I'm learning as I move forward, and just not having that embeddedness in New Zealand and Aotearoa and either of these cultures puts me at a disadvantage, because I'm not familiar with a lot of things and I'm learning about them. But it could also, you can argue that that's a positive, because you're approaching them from a kind of outsider's perspective. Yeah.
No, that was very well put. I can see a lot of these things, because these are a lot of things which I feel as well navigating through New Zealand when throughout my entire time here. But one more thing which I again hark back to Ririwai's work and Dr. Tianya's work is a lot of times they critique outsider research, saying that what benefit is it bringing to the community? Now, I feel this is a very direct question in some ways, which I'm saying in a roundabout way, but what benefits does your work have to the people who you've been interviewing?
What benefits does it have? Well, again, like it is a big question. We could talk about it in terms of the implication of the research. First of all, you have 53% Māori who choose to disaffiliate from religion on the census. Nobody has bothered to understand what's happening here. Nobody has bothered to ask. And I just also want to emphasize, you have a rise in the number of affiliation, in the rise of the category of no religion, and that rise is about maybe 17% between the last two censuses. And that same pattern, you have a decline in Māori identifying with Christianity at the same rate. So something is definitely changing here. And what's going on? So understanding that and kind of like hearing the stories and offering an alternative voice, giving voice to these participants. I'm not giving voice, I hate that word, but what I mean is recognizing what's happening for Māori atheists here is I feel it's overdue. This is something that should have been long looked at, and what we're kind of, what we're working against is this very monolithic view of not just Māori, but all indigenous people as being somehow, fundamentally all being spiritual, beings. You can just look around any material, whether it's UN, whether it's policies on health, whether it's academic work on, writing on indigenous religion. It starts from the assumption that all people are spiritual if you're indigenous. And this is quite an outrageous approach. And so kind of disturbing all of that is, I think, one of the main things that our research is doing. And and then we can move forward with that and say, well, how can we bring more nuance to our policies? How can we just change this idea that, if you're Māori, it doesn't mean yet you're necessarily also religious or spiritual. Just as the way that I'm infuriated, where if you're Iranian, therefore you're Shia or Sunni. Like, no, that is not the case. Can we please drop that and move on as human species? Yeah.
I will say though, I completely agree in that. I think studying religion is a very niche subject. So I feel like there aren't a lot of people currently, like it's a blooming field, but there aren't a lot of people. So I feel like it's important work. And I do feel it's really important work to do it in the land of the people, meeting the people, interacting with people, kind of shifting those ideas. I feel that way while studying with Hindu populations now. All of the work done on Hinduism has been done by people sitting in the West, typing away, having a very monotheistic idea and kind of applying it to polytheism. So I do really credit your work in terms of you living here, interacting with the people here, and obviously not giving a voice, but giving a jump start to the field of Maori religious studies. And obviously it can go so many places from here. So I do really appreciate and commend your work on that front. No, but yeah, I completely relate to it. I was like, oh my God. But in terms of coming back to, or wait, Sahar, do you have any questions on this front first?
Which front?
Oh no, I was just
general front.
it was quite nice for those who are only going to listen to the audio version that while Sara was saying that, you could just see Faro nodding and what do you do, like what does, like, snapping her fingers vehemently in agreement throughout the entire thing. And I didn't know half of these things. I didn't know about the UN bodies and stuff all base their policies on it. I felt it was more like a stereotype which had been made up by people long ago. I didn't know that official policy still runs on similar lines.
Just before we begin to wrap up, how do you see your previous work with mindfulness and people leaving religion and everything tying into your current work right now? Do you see any similar broader themes, in your previous work and your work now? And are there any predictions that you can make based on these trends that you've been seeing that can keep the listeners hooked for maybe the next time we have you on?
Are there any trends across these two projects? Well, it was a project that looked to understand religious change of some sort, right? Whether it's atheists who sit on the cushion and meditate, does that change their perspective in a different direction from being a atheist to perhaps venturing into some Buddhist philosophy and different paths towards Western Buddhism and secular Buddhism and that sort of thing. So the theme is religious change. The theme is conversion, deconversion. Whether do I have any predictions? I'm not in the business of predictions. This is, qualitative research. I'm a humble scholar of religion and anthropology, with a tendency to lean on anthropological methods. We don't do predictions, I'm afraid.
That's right. Yeah, awesome, Sarah. Thank you for coming on. Sahar, do you want to
Yep. I think we should do this to get the short, snappy advert of your project for all media usage. Like, if you could give us a very short minute, 30 seconds, whatever, summary of what your Explaining Atheism project is, and it's kind of goes or whatever. If you had to sum it down to a minute, what would it be?
Can I have a think about this?
Yeah, of course. Take your time. This is like
Okay.
I know it's really putting you on the
It's
spot.
like write an
But
abstract and talk about it at the same time.
exactly, this is a what do you say, audio
Okay.
abstract.
Yeah, but make it snappy and fun for
Fun.
Gen Z,
I'm
basically.
sorry. Okay. Should I just like bring the camera in and out and just have a cat on my head? I don't know.
That's what you mean.
Okay, whatever works. Okay, let me have a couple of goes, and then you can use whichever one works.
Yeah.
Okay, so our project, we're looking at what does it mean to be an atheist in the Maori context. And the reason we started this project is because the census data points to a significant pattern of religious change. Maori are leaving Christianity at the same rate that the category of no religion is growing. So what's happening there? Are people just rejecting Christianity, or are they also rejecting other beliefs, including Maori spirituality or traditional Maori beliefs? So in our project, we speak with Maori who don't believe in gods, and we try to understand, what does atheism mean? How is it articulated? What are the contours of it? What are the different worldviews, outlooks, commitments, values that people have? And trying to kind of outline those different contours.
No, I thought that was really well explained. I thought that was excellently explained.
Then we're good. That's
good.
that. So, last thing, then, nothing to do about your
Who am I?
studies, nothing to do about your work. The final wrap up questions. I have sent Farrell half of them, and Farrell's going to ask one half, and I'm going to ask the other half. We're just going to
Okay.
alternate, and the goal is essentially you answer as quickly or whatever comes up.
Are you
to your
doing
mind
an
first,
analysis
but we might.
on these responses from an implicit?
We should.
What are the things in psychology? And okay, just joking.
We're subconsciously
Yeah,
analyzing and making archetypes out of the different researchers we meet. Yes, that is exactly what we want to do.
Sounds great.
Exactly. And we're gonna send you all the audio so you can do a linguistic analysis of it all as well, just to add to the thing.
This is just a collaboration.
Perfect.
Exactly. This is how we rope people into our papers. Okay. All right. So, Fro, you have the questions. Hopefully, you look at them. You can go first. You ask the first one, then I'll ask the next one, and we'll go that way.
Okay.
Sweet.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Yeah. I don't know anyone who says winter. Psychopaths.
Really, it depends on the country, I guess. Oh, my mom said winter actually, because I guess she's from India, right? A bit different.
Yeah, but what winter? Does she mean New Zealand winter, or does she mean Bombay winter?
I don't think anyone.
I reckon they would definitely.
I don't think anyone wants New Zealand winter. So yeah.
Right, movies or TV shows?
Ooh, if it's a good TV show, definitely that. Yeah.
I'll ask a follow-up to that. If your life was a TV show, what genre would it be?
Oh dear Lord, it will be. Well, what will it be? And I'm supposed to answer quickly. I think it would be some reality TV show. Yeah, I can't be more creative.
Love is Blind.
Love is Blind. Married at First Sight. Your mom, my dad.
I love that. Best answer so far. Okay, cats or dogs?
Oh, both.
Fair enough. If you could be an animal, what animal would you be?
What animal would I be? A goose.
Ooh.
That's really interesting.
They are amazing. They can swim, they can fly, they walk, they have attitude. You don't mess with them. They go long distance. I mean, and just the don't mess with me attitude, I find it very inspiring.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Anywhere right now. I would just choose home, because I'm a little bit homesick right now, but I obviously don't want to be living at home either. So yeah.
Sad
question.
Not the best.
Do you provide mental support to your participants?
Don't worry, we have a whole department of clinical psychology students. We come equipped.
You're not going to refer me to some mindfulness course, are you?
I don't know. I don't think I believe in that.
I don't know what you do research on it. If you don't want to be referred to it, what does this say to everyone
I'm
else?
just asking.
All right. What is your least favorite type of music?
Ooh, country. Easy.
A lot of people say country.
It's just,
It is.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's a really understandable answer. Okay, last one on my side. If you were not doing this, what would you be doing?
I think I would... ideally, I would have liked to draw background for Miyazaki's animation. Like, if I could just draw the background for his movies, I feel like that's a dream job. Or, with my amazing linguistic analytical skills, I could also be a good therapist, I think. Just be like, excuse me, what you just said. This is connected to this. But no, definitely I would like to be an illustrator for anime.
Do you generally draw?
I used to in a previous life.
That's amazing.
Do you have any good anime recommendations?
Miyazaki, generally, just
Work. Fair enough. What is something stupid someone's tricked you into believing or doing?
A lot of things. I'm very impressionable, I think. Something that someone tricked me into doing? Or believing. Well, I don't want to disillusion you guys, but the whole publishing industry and academia it's a bit of a, it's something to come into terms with the reality of it. The fact that academia has prestige, no. What else? Yeah. This might have to be deleted, otherwise I'll be fired.
Nah. So you'd be surprised the number of people who've said things like similar things.
I mean, the whole publishing industry is like, our labor and the works and the hours of time we spent, people's views and all this resources and time is spent on it. And then if you want to publish it open access, you have to pay the publisher. And then don't get me started. Yeah. Review it. And if you can't review it in this many days, then you send us some recommendation. Like, no, go figure it out yourself. Like, what? No. And nobody got time for that. Don't ask anymore.
I think, Sara, this is a great segue into the question you ask at the very end to everyone. Do you mind if I ask it?
Do it.
Which is, if there's one thing you can leave the viewers with, like one advice that you can give to the viewers / listeners, what would that be?
Ooh, I'm not in the business of trusting my own advice right now. I would really, I mean, I don't know your audience, but I would imagine they would be well equipped with sort of, critical discourse analysis, just understanding and asking questions and not taking anything they hear, whether it's from their lecturer, whether it's from their supervisor, whether it's from their boss, whether it's from the politician, not taking anything they say for granted, but rather looking at it and analyzing it and analyzing the agendas and different interests that serves that particular word or that particular reasoning is serving, and who is it at, whose interests is it serving? Like, I feel like that's the most useful thing that I got out of studying religion and my career. And yeah, I would encourage everyone to be suspicious.
Be suspicious. Don't trust anyone or anything. Don't even trust us.
Your friends and family, but
life's an illusion.
Nah. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to question people. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sara, for coming on. Look forward to having you on again once you finish once you finish the project, and then you can come talk about your results in more detail, as opposed to a few hints here and there. So yeah, thanks, Pharaoh. Any final words from your side?
No, just thank you. This was really, really interesting. I know there were some hard questions out there. So yeah, really thank you so much for answering them, really taking them on the chin.
Thank you so much for having me. And your questions were very hard, but that's not, I didn't expect anything less. You guys did amazing. Such a pleasure to be part of this. And I look forward to coming back and having proper answers for you in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for viewing, listening. And until next time. See you. Bye.